welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is Brewing with Underwhelming Commanders, episode 24. But this is a very special episode, and that's because I'm not doing what I typically do, which is to use the poll that you guys all voted on to decide which commanders I'll be talking about. I will be using that poll in the next video, so in the next episode, I'll be returning to the normal format. For this episode, I decided to sort of offload a whole bunch of decks I've been making. A lot of times the commanders that come in third and second place, I will actually become interested in my own ideas from doing it on that particular episode, and I'll just go ahead and build the rest of the deck myself just to play test it myself in case I'm interested in it, and sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. So all of the decks, the 12 decks that I'll be giving away on this episode are all from commanders that I did on my Underwhelming Commanders episodes prior to this, but the ones that I didn't actually have deck lists for, right? The second and third place ones where I just sort of talked about it. Here I'm actually fleshing out all the ideas and making an actual deck. That will be posted in the description below. So in no particular order, I'm going to start it with Bontu the Glorified, 2 and a black. God, 4/6 with Menace and Indestructible. Bontu the Glorified can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. And you can pay 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature, scry 1, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So just like I talked about in that video, I threw in some stuff that cares about dying, like those morbid abilities fit really good here. I threw in a bunch of stuff that we can use as sack fodder, and of course I also threw in a bunch of stuff that wants us to be sacrificing stuff all the time. It was a pretty easy deck to finish off the details with. My favorite includes here though are Witch of the Moors and Tavash Gloom Summoner, both which you wouldn't think to put in a deck like this, but our commander is gaining life, so we are going to get that life gain trigger on every turn. So I think they are both a fantastic fit. But moving on to our next commander, which is Brigid, Hero of Kinsbale, 2 white, Kithkin Archer, 2/3 with first strike. Tap, Brigid, Hero of Kinsbale, deals 2 damage to each attacking and blocking creature target player controls. So obviously giving Death Touch to our commander is going to be the most beneficial thing here. It's just going to straight up kill all those creatures that our commander is dealing damage to. Doesn't even have to be attacking us, can be attacking anyone or blocking, could be anyone's creatures. We don't have to be involved in this equation at all. We can just decide whose creatures we want to destroy. We also need the stuff like Rings of Brighthearth and Illusionist Bracers to double up that effect. And my favorite includes in this deck are Nikote and Kusari Gamma, 2 equipments that are just a perfect fit with this commander. This sort of turned into a bit of an equipment deck. Nikote has that ability where equipped creature deals damage to a creature, you tap that creature, and as long as Nikote remains on play, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. And Kusari Gamma, when equipped creature deals damage to a blocking creature, doesn't have to be combat damage, can just be our commander's ability. It's going to deal damage to each other creature defending player controls, so that's a perfect fit as well. But let's move on to our next commander, which is going to be Diaochan, Artful Beauty, 3 and a red, Human Advisor, 1/1. Tap, destroy target creature of your choice, then destroy target creature of an opponent's choice. Activate only during your turn before attackers are declared. Such a unique and interesting ability. So I actually had this deck for myself and just didn't love it. You know, I really got to love a deck before I make it in paper and really run with it. Basically what you have to do is you have to make it so that your commander isn't going to die to its own ability, right? Because if you keep destroying all your opponent's creatures, they're going to pick your commander to be the second target for her own ability. You can obviously use this in a political way, but I always like to play it safe. If we throw some swords in here like Sword of Fire and Ice and Sword of Sinuous Steel, that gives our commander protection from red, so it can't be targeted by its own ability. You can also just give it Indestructible with like a Hammer of Nazan or a Dark Steel Plate, of course. And then I sort of went with an Indestructible theme, right? We don't want our other creatures dying as well. So I got a bunch of really fun Indestructible creatures in here like Manor Gargoyle and Creepy Doll. Our opponents can still target our creature with it if they choose to, but it's not going to get destroyed, right? We're still going to get to destroy a creature on the table, and then our opponent can pick our Creepy Doll if they want to. It's just going to sit there and not get destroyed. And then because I am doing a very heavy equipment theme in here, and because Shield of Kaldra fit with what I was doing, it is giving equipped creature indestructible, so we want to put it on our commander. I decided why not throw Sword of Kaldra and Helm of Kaldra in here as well, and we can do the whole Assemble Kaldra thing. It's just another little added thing that I threw into the deck because it sort of fit with what we were doing here. Moving on to Donal, Herald of Wings, 2 blue, human wizard, 3/3. Whenever you cast a non-legendary creature spell with flying, you may copy it, except that the copy is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Do this only once each turn. Really great commander, I think. Not a very popular one, though. Of course, we want to put some flying tribal stuff in this. That goes without saying. We can just put some good stuff, flying creatures in here like Thieving Skydiver. Pilgrim's Eye will go get us an extra land. But I really like the flash route because this triggers only once each turn, so we want to be able to do it on our opponent's turn as well. So I put as many creatures with flash and flying in this deck as I could find. Of course, we have to throw Twinning Staff in this deck because if you would copy a spell one or more times, instead copy it that many times, plus an additional one. So this is just going to give us that extra copy off of our commander. So now we'll get 3. And then I just threw some big blind boys in here like Sphinx of the Second Sun and Tidespout Tyrant to help close out the game. Essentially, at the end of the day, this is just going to be I smash my opponent with my big flying creatures sort of deck. Moving on to Gadrak, the Crown Scourge. Another third place commander that I talked about in my Underwhelming Commanders episodes just a few episodes ago, I believe. Again, I just thought, even though it's a really underwhelming commander and tough to build around, we've gotten so much treasure support in the last year that this commander, I think, has become a lot more viable. Stuff like Goldspan Dragon and Zorn, obviously, you're just auto includes in here. Stormkiln Arnest and Academy Manufactor, again, are just giving us incredible value. And then I went with a little bit of an artifact theme. I got Goblin Welder and Trash for Treasure in here so that we can sacrifice those treasure tokens to get extra value out of them. I also threw in Gearper Aether Grid and Reckless Fireweaver to sort of help move the win along. Other than just, we're making treasure tokens for mana, I thought, why not use them in other ways? And Hellkite Tyrant is going to be an obvious win con for this. We don't even need to steal our opponent's artifacts here. We can just make a bunch of treasure tokens and just straight up win the game. We're moving on to Hotow, Honored Physician, 1 green, human, 1/2. Tap to put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. Activate this ability only during your turn before attackers are declared. And as I said in that video, the ability there is a little annoying that you can only do it on your turn before attackers are declared, but you can do it on your upkeep, right? If there's a creature in your graveyard that you really badly want, you can put it on top of your library during your upkeep, so on your draw step, you'll draw it and have it in your hand. Of course, there's a lot of ways to use this commander, but the best way, I think, is cheating those creatures off the top of your library into play with cards like Call of the Wild and Zoologist. And then because we are going to have a lot of really big green creatures in this deck, you got to throw in some of my favorites like Lure of Prey and Dramatic Entrance so that if they get stuck in our hand, we can just cheat them into play that way. And I also threw Verdant Succession in here. This is a card that someone mentioned in the comments of that video that I missed. Really fantastic interaction with this commander. 4 and a green enchantment. Whenever a green non-token creature dies, that creature's controller may search their library for a card with the same name as that creature, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So obviously the same name thing doesn't usually work great in Commander, but here we can respond. As long as this is done on our turn before attackers are declared, again, that's the only sort of drawback here. We have to plan around this. We can sacrifice one of our creatures. Verdant Succession's ability is going to go on the stack. The creature we've sacrificed goes to the graveyard, and we can respond by putting it on top of our library so that when the Verdant Succession resolves, now that creature is in our library, right? It's on top, so we're going to put it directly back into play again. So that's a great fit in this deck. Really interesting deck, I think. But moving on to Jolrael, 1 volley, Recluse, 1 and a green, human druid, 1/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 green cat creature token. You can pay 4 green until end of turn. Creatures you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So again, I've said it a few times. I can't believe this isn't more popular. It's green, it's drawing cards or wanting you to draw cards. It has the win con stapled on the commander. I can't believe this one isn't more popular. I thought it was a pretty easy build around too. I just put lots of draw effects. We want lots of second draw effects. I put Sensei's Divining Top in here because it is an easy second draw, whether it be on our turn or our opponent's turn. We can spin the top, draw a card, then put it on top of owner's library to get that second draw. Brainstone's another one that I thought was a great fit. We're going to pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw 3 cards. So this we can do on someone else's turn, right? Our commander will trigger when we draw our second card on each turn. So we want to be doing on our opponent's turns as much as we can as well. Got a little bit of cat tribal stuff in here like Feline Sovereign and Hungry Lynx. I think they're going to be both fantastic fits. Causally Slingers as well. Whenever it enters the battlefield or another cat we control enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. That's a fantastic fit with our commander. And then I threw Eldrazi Monument in here to help close out the game. It's going to give our team +1/+1, flying and indestructible. And at the beginning of our upkeep, we sacrifice a creature. If we can't, we sacrifice the monument, but that's okay. We should always have a cat kicking around that we can sacrifice. And again, our commander has that ability on it, right? Being able to pump our whole team. I think it's pretty fantastic having that sort of win con stapled on your commander. Moving on to Morite of the Frost. And I had just covered this one recently too and had a lot of people comment that they wanted to see this deck. So I went ahead and made it. Of course, Morite is 2 green, blue, blue, shapeshifter, snow creature, 0/0 with changeling. You may have Morite of the Frost enter the battlefield as a copy of a permanent you control, except it's legendary and it's snow in addition to its other types. If it's a creature, it enters the battlefield with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it, and it has changeling. So I thought, why not make a deck where you're not copying other creatures, right? You can just copy anything with your Morite, and why not copy a land like a Tango Pool Bridge or a Darksteel Citadel that are indestructible? So now we have an indestructible commander. But it's a land, that's okay. We can use those Awaken cards to put counters on it and turn it into a creature that we can then attack with. So this is a bit of a land/Voltron deck. I know it's a little bit confusing. There is quite a bit of support here, though. Avalanche Caller is the one that I thought was a perfect fit with Morite, where we can pay 2 and target snowland you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with hexproof and haste. So now our commander is going to be indestructible, hexproof, and haste. That's pretty darn good for a Voltron strategy. And remember, that land is a snowland, right? No matter what our Morite turns into, that permanent is going to be snow. So this definitely works here. You can also throw in cards like Embodiment of Insight and Sylvan Advocate that are going to pump our land creatures. And then we can take extra advantage of the fact that our commander is a land by putting in stuff like Devastation Tide and Crush of Tentacles that are going to bounce all non-land permanents, right? Even if our commander is a creature, it's still going to be a land, so it's not going to be affected by any of this stuff. Embargo, Oblivion Stone, right? There's lots of effects like this that are going to hurt all non-land permanents, so our commander is going to be the only creature available for attacking. I think this is a really interesting idea. So for all those people that were interested in it, there is that deck list if you want to give it a try. Next up is Taranika Acrone Veteran. 1 white. Human soldier 3/3 with vigilance. Whenever Taranika Acrone Veteran attacks, untap another target creature you control. Till end of turn, that creature has base power and toughness 4/4 and gains indestructible. Pretty great ability, I think. I think there's a lot of ways you can use that. I like throwing in a card like Bushi Tenderfoot, which is just one of those cards that is like a bucket list thing for me where I want to flip it. It's a 1 white mana, 1/1. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Bushi Tenderfoot this turn dies, flip Bushi Tenderfoot. Of course, that's incredibly hard to do with a 1/1, but if you can turn it into a 4/4 with indestructible, it's going to be a lot easier to do. And then when it's flipped, becomes Kenzo, the Hard-Hearted, 3/4 with Double Strike and Bushido 2. So I put a lot of creatures like that in the deck that, of course, just want to be bigger. And also creatures that want to be untapped, like Magus of the Disc. This is an interesting one. 2 white, Human Wizard, 2/4. Enters the battlefield tapped, and you can pay 1 and tap it, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So you can get into a scenario here where you attack with your commander and turn your Magus of the Disc into a 4/4, untap it, use its ability, and it's going to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. It won't destroy itself because it's indestructible. So you can do it over and over again. Of course, you'll kill your commander. You'll have to cast your commander again or find out some way to protect it, but it is an interesting fit in the deck. I also got Auriok Blade Warden, which I just think is a perfect fit with Taranika. 1 and a white, Human Soldier, 1/1. Tap, target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is Auriok. Auriok, Blade Warden's power. So we can tap this, give a creature of ours +1/+1, and then with our commander's ability, untap it and make it a 4/4 so we can use it again. But now it's a 4/4, right? Its power is 4. So in total, we can give a creature +5/+5 with this. I think it's a great fit. It's also a human and a soldier, and I went with a little bit of a soldier sub-theme here because there was quite a bit of soldiers in the deck. So check that one out if you want to. Next up, though, we got Storrev, Devkarin Lich. 1 black, green, zombie, elf, wizard, 5/4. Has trample, and whenever Storrev, Devkarin Lich deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, return to your hand target creature or planeswalker card in your graveyard that wasn't put there this combat. So the very confusing wording on that commander. Basically, what Storrev does is it just returns a creature from your graveyard to your hand whenever it connects. That's it. It can't be a creature that died in that combat, but that's not really going to be the kind of strategy you're going to build around. You're going to build around, I'm putting creatures into my graveyard in lots of other ways, and I can get them back with my commander. So Auric Lore Mage, one of my favorite cards, is just a perfect fit here where we can just chuck any creature we want into our graveyard and then immediately get it back with our commander. Just becomes basically tap tutor for a creature, which is fantastic. Obviously, we can use sacrifice creatures like Caustic Caterpillar here as well, where we can sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment and then immediately get it back with our commander to use it again. I did throw Survival of the Fittest in this deck. It's a really expensive card, I know. You could take it out if you want to, but it is just a fantastic fit here where we can discard a creature to go get another creature out of our deck and then, of course, get the creature back that we just discarded when we connect with our commander. And then because we want to be connecting with our commander all the time, I did put in Eldamri, Lord of Leaves, because our commander is an elf, and this will give it Forest Walk, and it's likely that we will have at least one opponent that is playing green, I imagine. Also gives our commander Shroud too, which makes it a lot harder to remove. It's also a pretty expensive card, but again, I just think it's a great fit with Storrev. And then I also threw in Zombie Master as well, because our commander is a zombie, and Zombie Master will give our commander Swamp Walk. So again, ensuring that we can get in for damage, right? The chances we are playing a game where no one's playing black or green are, I mean, I don't even know if that's ever happened in the history of Commander. And again, also gives our commander a regenerate ability, which is going to make it harder to get off the table. So another great fit. This is probably the most expensive deck out of all of the ones that I'm posting today, so be warned about that. Next up is Shale, Dean of Radiance, but not really because I didn't use that side. I used the other side, Embrose, Dean of Shadow. 2 black, human warlock, 4/4. Tap to put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature. Then Embrose, Dean of Shadow deals 2 damage to that creature. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card. Another commander that I was surprised wasn't more popular. I guess there was a lot of great commanders from Strixhaven and C21. That probably was part of the reason why this one got overshadowed a bit. Anytime a commander says draw a card on it, I just think it's definitely worth taking a look at. This one's pretty basic. You know, I went with a +1/+1 counter theme. There's lots of support in that. You know, even in just black and white, there is a lot of support there. I also threw in Brina the Demagogue because I thought that was a good fit with the whole +1/+1 counter theme. Shadrick Silverquill as well. You know, there's actually quite a bit of legendary creatures in this deck that ended up fitting with what we were doing. Yahenni and Yawgmoth both in here as well. We do want sack outlets. Yahenni also puts counters on himself, so that fits. And of course, Yawgmoth, we want sack outlets. We want proliferating. Everything he's doing is going to fit what's going on in this deck. So pretty basic what's happening in the deck here, right? +1/+1 counter theme in black and white. There is a couple of neat little things that I did in the deck, but other than that, it's what you would probably expect. And I'm finishing off today with Asmira, Holy Avenger. 2 green and a white human cleric, 2/3 with flying. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on Asmira, Holy Avenger for each creature put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn. And again, I thought this was a pretty good build around and a pretty obvious one as well. We have lots of these creatures like Selfless Savior and Dauntless Bodyguard that are cheap little creatures that we can sacrifice to protect our commander, right? Our commander is going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. This is essentially a Voltron strategy. You're going to have this big flying commander. Our opponents are going to want to get it off the table. We can sacrifice one of these creatures to protect it from the removal that our opponents might be using. And then the added bonus is we just had a creature die, so we're going to get even more counters on it, right? So I loaded the deck up with those kinds of creatures. Cliffside Rescuer, Alcide of Life's Bounty. There is a lot of creatures like this in white. And also, you know, we got green in this deck, so why not put in Sakura Tribe Elder and Dawn Treader Elk? You know, we're going to be wanting to get lands anyway, so why not do it in creature form so we can sacrifice those creatures and get counters on our commander. So basically I went with, as much as I could, any sort of removal or problem solving situation, we did it in creature form. So we got Dauntless Escort in here to protect our team. We got Bounty Agent as a removal card. We got Remorseful Cleric as graveyard hate, right? But it's a creature that we're sacrificing, so everything we're doing is putting counters on our commander. I think this is a pretty fantastic deck. And I even put a little bit of recursion in here as well, because white actually does recursion for those low CMC creatures fairly well. So I ended up with a pretty darn good deck here, I think. But that is it. That is all. 12 decks for you guys. All the deck lists are in the description below. Feel free to check out the ones you're interested in and give them a spin. And if you like the way I build decks, I have a Patreon where I do all my patron deck techs. I do my deck doctors. And I also play a lot of Spell Table with my patrons on Discord if you're interested in that option as well. So the link for my Patreon is in the description below as well. Feel free to check it out. It does help support the channel also. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.